Now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. In the era of COVID-19, most economists have found it difficult to make solid predictions about what will happen in the months to come. However, it must be said that more and more of them are feeling slightly more upbeat about 2022 than they have over the past couple of years, but numerous uncertainties remain beside the pandemic, lockdowns and the threat of new variants emerging. There's inflation, the Federal Reserve lifting rates and ending its bond buying program, supply chain disruptions, as well as geopolitical tensions, including those between the US and China and the US and Russia.
Well, that's just to name a few. So how much of a stress test is 2022 going to put on the world economy? For the answers to some of these questions, we connect to Song Su-young, Professor of Economics at Chungang University. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
So what do you think are the three biggest risks to the global economy this year, and do governments have the tools to deal with them if they emerge?
Yeah, several factors are offered as a potential threat, threatening candidates to the global economy. Even though the threatening factors are of the same origin, that each could have a different magnitude of impact on the for the different countries. For example, in Europe, Ukraine's situation will be an imminent threat and could be developed into huge turmoil. As for the Korean economy, I think the biggest threat is the escalated political tension to devastate the economic recovery, particularly between China and the U.S. On the island of Taiwan. And the next one is elongated lockdown and the continued supply disruption due to the outbreak of a vaccine-resistant new corona variants. And also, slow growth and the sharp declines in inflation in the second half of the 2022. Currently, the soaring inflation would be a matter of issues, but in the second half, I expect a declining of inflation, and the biggest risk is we may return to the pre-pandemic secular stagnation situation with too low growth and too low inflation. So this kind of fluctuation of the inflation and the economic situation would be most serious potential threat against for the recovery of the economy for the upcoming year of 2022.
Now, Professor, some economists are really concerned about the effect that Fed's rate liftoff might have on emerging economies like South Korea, as they can lead to massive capital outflows. Just how vulnerable would you say the South Korean economy is in this situation?
Yeah, soaring inflation and some sudden hike of interest rates by the Federal Reserve Board in the U.S. would be maybe a main culprit to cause this kind of problem. That is, the flight to quality could cause a massive outflow of foreign capital. But however, South Korea had already experienced such an ordeal 25 years ago in the year of 1996, and we had successfully won through by the year of 2003. So currently, above all, South Korea is not anymore counted as an emerging market currently. And I think we are most unlikely to be vulnerable to such a situation because our government has already a liquidity swap contract with the Federal Reserve of the U.S. and also FEMA, the Foreign Investment Monetary Authority, Foreign and International Monetary Authority repurchase account in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. So to that regard, I don't expect such experience, and we are not anymore vulnerable to such a situation. So anyway, the Federal Reserve terminate bond buying stimulus plan as early as by the mid-March in this year, and then the interest hike could cause trouble for some emerging economies, such as South Africa, Argentina, and Turkey. These countries have a very huge debt from the foreign capital. So to that regard, they are mostly concerned about this interest hike.
Now, Professor, the past few years have been marked by sporadic economic setbacks caused by the pandemic variants, COVID-19 variants, rather. Now, heading into 2022, do you think these risks have been mitigated thanks to vaccinations and new antiviral treatments and a lower mortality rate?
Yeah, but as I'm not an oral expert in these and in disease and the medical issues, but all I can say is I just trust the opinion of some experts and the pathologists. I hope all people fully vaccinated, and I mean all globally, and the herd immunity to become effective. So far as I'm concerned, experts have been warning that if the pandemic is allowed to rage again in some less developed countries, particularly in Africa, and then it could spread out around the world, and we could see emergence of a vaccine-resistant COVID variants that may result in a return to lockdown and further disruption of the supply around the world. So it could have a really serious impact. The IMF chief economist, Zita Gopinath, last October, she has mentioned that without successful blocking of the spread of the coronavirus, that could have a 40% of unless a 40% population around the world is not fully vaccinated, then it could have a really serious impact on the economy. So that's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to finish on too much of a grim note. What do you think are some of the bright spots the world economy might be able to look forward to as something we desperately need in 2022?
Yeah, just the opposite of what I have just mentioned. So the resolution of the political tension between U.S. and Russia, and particularly for Korea, South Korea, what is of importance lies between the removal of the trade dispute and the tension between China and the U.S. Those are most imminent and very threatening geopolitical problems for the recovery of the economy. And then the other thing is once the vaccines are fully deployed, and then as long as the coronavirus has been contained and controlled, we can look forward to the surge of the recovery of the economy and the we can have a very bright prospect for the upcoming years.
Right. Let's hope for that too. Now, that was Song Su-young, professor of economics at Chungang University, on the outlook for the global economy in 2022. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you.